The Deep Space Monitoring Station orbiting Pluto detected them first. Massive ships larger than anything humans had ever built, moving through the outer solar system like dark clouds against the stars. The signals they broadcast were clear enough once the translation computers got to work on them. "People of the third planet," the message began, "you have been judged unworthy to exist in this galaxy. The mighty Zephyrian hegemony claims this system for its own. You have 72 of your planet's rotations to surrender completely, or we will remove you from existence." In the underground command center beneath the Colorado mountains, Admiral Sarah Chen read the translation 3 times before she started laughing. The sound echoed through the quiet room where dozens of officers and technicians worked at their stations. Everyone looked up at her with confused expressions. "Ma'am?" asked Colonel Martinez, her second in command. "Are you all right?" Chen wiped tears from her eyes and handed him the tablet. "Read this, Miguel. Then tell me what you think." Martinez read the alien message carefully. His eyebrows went up and a slow smile spread across his face. "Well, I'll be damned. They actually did it." "Did what?" asked Lieutenant Foster, one of the younger officers. "They declared war on us," Chen said, still grinning. "After all these years of wondering when we'd get our first real test, they finally showed up." The room filled with excited chatter as the news spread from station to station. Chen watched her people's reactions with satisfaction. No panic, no fear, just professional interest and what looked suspiciously like enthusiasm. "How many ships do they have?" someone called out. "Initial scans show approximately 10,000 vessels," reported Sensor Chief Williams. "They're big ones, too. Each ship looks to be about 3 times the size of our largest cruiser." A whistle came from somewhere in the room. 10,000? That's it? Chen raised her hand for quiet. "Let's not get overconfident. We don't know what kind of weapons they have or how fast they are. This is what we've been preparing for, but it's still the real thing." She walked over to the main display screen, which now showed a tactical view of the solar system, with red dots marking the alien fleet's positions. They were spreading out as they moved inward, clearly planning to surround Earth and cut off any escape routes. "Classic encirclement pattern," observed Major Thompson from the tactical section, "just like we studied in the academy." "Too classic," Chen agreed. "Either they're being careful, or they don't think we're much of a threat." She turned to face the room. "All right, people, you know what to do. Send word to all fleet commanders. Tell them it's time for War Game Omega, except this time the enemy shoots back." War Game Omega had been the military's ultimate scenario for 20 years. Every officer trained for it, every ship was designed with it in mind, and every defensive system was built to handle it. The idea of fighting an alien invasion had gone from science fiction to serious military planning after the discovery of faster-than-light travel. "What about the civilians?" asked Foster. "Shouldn't we start evacuations?" Chen shook her head. "Not yet. If we start moving millions of people around, it'll just create chaos. Besides, our job is to make sure they never get close enough to Earth for that to matter." The alien fleet was still 3 days away from Earth at their current speed. That gave humanity time to move their pieces into position. Chen knew that hidden throughout the solar system, human ships were already powering up their engines and checking their weapons. Some were disguised as mining stations, others as simple cargo haulers. The aliens would see a few obvious military vessels, but they wouldn't see the real threat until it was too late. "Admiral," called Communications Officer Davis, "we're getting reports from the outer colonies. Mars, Europa, Titan. They're all asking for instructions. Tell them to implement their defensive protocols, but stay quiet about it. No unnecessary transmissions, no obvious military movements. We want these Zephyrians to think we're just a bunch of scared primitives." The truth was very different. Humanity had spread across the solar system over the past 50 years, and every settlement had been built with defense in mind. Mining stations could become weapons platforms in hours. Cargo ships carried hidden missile pods. Even the space elevators had been designed to serve as massive railguns if needed. "The aliens are broadcasting again," Davis reported. "Same message, but they're adding something about our pitiful technology and how resistance is useless." "Let them talk," Chen said. "Confidence is good in an enemy. It makes them careless." She walked back to her command station and pulled up the files on human military history. Every major war, every significant battle, every tactical innovation from the past 300 years was stored there. The aliens probably had their own military traditions, But Chen doubted they had anything like humanity's experience with warfare. Humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They had perfected the art of killing and developed an almost instinctive understanding of combat. Every video game taught tactics, every movie showed strategy, and every sports match trained people to think competitively. Without meaning to, the entire species had been preparing for this moment. "Ma'am, we're getting casualty estimates from the computer models," reported Lieutenant Commander Brooks from the planning section. "How bad?" Chen asked, though she kept her voice calm. "If we execute Omega as planned, projected human losses are less than 12% across all services. Alien losses—" Brooks paused and checked his screen again. "The computer says 96% probability of total enemy fleet destruction." The room went quiet. Those were numbers that seemed too good to be true. Even with all their preparation and planning, the computer might be wrong, Chen said carefully. These aliens conquered other worlds to get this far. They must know how to fight. "Yes, ma'am," Brooks agreed. "But the models are based on their approach pattern and the tactics they're showing so far. They're fighting like they expect to face chemical rockets and nuclear bombs." Chen nodded. That made sense. Most species probably developed spaceflight and weapons at about the same rate. They wouldn't expect to find a species that had been imagining space warfare for decades before they could actually fight in space. "All right, people, let's get to work. I want status reports from all fleet commanders in 2 hours. Make sure our people understand this is not a drill, but it's also not a reason to panic. We've trained for this exact situation more times than I can count." As her staff began implementing the battle plan, Chen allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Humanity had wondered for years what would happen when they met hostile aliens. Now they were about to find out if all their preparation had been worth it. The Zephyrian hegemony had made one critical mistake. They had declared war on a species that had been practicing warfare since before they could walk upright. What the aliens thought would be a simple conquest was about to become the most expensive lesson in galactic history. Chen looked at the display showing the approaching alien fleet and smiled. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said quietly. "Class is about to begin." Captain Vextar stood on the bridge of the hegemony flagship Worldbreaker and watched the primitive planet grow larger on his screens. His mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. This would be another easy victory for the glorious Zephyrian hegemony. "Fleet Commander," reported his weapons officer. "We are detecting some small vessels moving to intercept us. Primitive designs, very small." Vextar's 4 eyes focused on the tactical display. Perhaps 30 human ships were moving toward his fleet of 10,000. The size difference was laughable. Each Zephyrian vessel was massive, built to intimidate and overwhelm lesser species. "How small are these ships?" he asked. "Our smallest cruiser is 5 times larger than their biggest vessel," came the reply. "They appear to be using chemical propulsion and primitive energy weapons." "Chemical propulsion?" Vextar laughed. A sound like grinding metal. "Are they planning to ram us? Ready the gravity cannons. We will make quick work of this foolishness." But as the human ships came closer, something seemed wrong. They moved in ways that made no sense. Instead of approaching in formation like proper warships, they scattered and weaved through space like insects. Some dove toward the nearby asteroid belt. Others used the gravity of Jupiter's moons to change direction suddenly. "Why are they flying like that?" demanded Vextar. "Are their pilots insane?" "Unknown, Fleet Commander. Perhaps their navigation systems are damaged?" The first exchange of fire came when the human ships reached weapon range. Vextar expected to see them destroyed immediately by the hegemony's superior firepower. Instead, he watched in growing confusion as his gravity beams missed their targets completely. The human ship seemed to know exactly where the Zephyrian weapons would fire before they fired them. They twisted and turned, using momentum and gravity in ways that seemed impossible. One small human vessel actually used a gravity beam's pull to slingshot itself behind a Zephyrian cruiser and attack from the rear. "How did they do that?" Vextar demanded. "I don't understand it, sir. They're using our own weapons against us." The human counterattack was even more confusing. Instead of the expected nuclear missiles or energy beams, they fired strange projectiles that seemed to be nothing more than chunks of metal and rock. But these projectiles moved incredibly fast and hit with devastating force. "Those aren't weapons," said the tactical officer. "Those are mining charges and construction materials. They're firing their tools at us." Vexitar watched as one of his destroyers took a direct hit from what appeared to be a repurposed asteroid mining drill. The weapon punched through the ship's armor like it was made of paper and caused a massive internal explosion. "Impossible," he hissed. "How can primitive tools be so effective?" What Vexitar didn't understand was that humans had been mining asteroids for decades. They knew exactly how much force was needed to break apart rock and metal. They also knew that anything that could crack open an asteroid could probably crack open a spaceship. The battle continued for 3 hours, and it was unlike anything in Zephyrian military history. The humans refused to fight in formation or follow any recognizable tactics. Instead, they seemed to make up new strategies on the spot. One group of human ships lured a Zephyrian squadron into an asteroid field, then used mining explosives to create a debris storm that disabled half the alien vessels. Another human ship pretended to be damaged and drifting, only to spring to life when a Zephyrian cruiser came close enough to board it. "They're not fighting like a military," observed the tactical officer. "They're fighting like pirates or raiders, or like they've done this before," Vexitar said grimly. The most disturbing moment came when a human vessel that had been completely disabled suddenly came back to life and rammed itself into a Zephyrian battleship. The explosion that followed destroyed both ships, but the humans seemed to consider this a victory. "Who does that?" demanded Vexitar. "Who sacrifices their own ship just to damage the enemy?" By the end of the engagement, Vexitar had lost 12 ships and had 18 more damaged. The humans had lost only 4 vessels, and even those had taken several Zephyrian ships with them. "Fleet Commander," reported the communications officer. "We're receiving a transmission from the human vessels." "Put it on screen." The image that appeared showed a human in a dark blue uniform. He was middle-aged with gray hair and calm eyes. When he spoke, his voice was steady and almost friendly. "This is Admiral Torres of the Earth Defense Fleet. I wanted to thank you for the warm-up exercise. Our pilots haven't had a chance to test their skills against real opponents in quite a while. We're just getting started, so I hope you brought plenty of ships." The transmission ended, leaving Vexitar staring at a blank screen. Warm-up exercise? Just getting started? What kind of species talked about war like it was a game? "Sir," said the weapons officer quietly. "What are your orders?" Vexitar looked at the tactical display. His fleet was still overwhelmingly larger than the human force, but the confidence he had felt a few hours ago was gone. These humans fought like nothing he had ever encountered. They were creative, unpredictable, and seemed to enjoy the chaos of battle. "Call for reinforcements," he said finally. "Send word to the High Command. Tell them we need additional fleets." "How many ships should we request?" Vexitar thought about the humans' strange tactics and their obvious skill at improvisation. He thought about how they had turned mining equipment into weapons and used his own gravity beams against him. Most of all, he thought about the calm confidence in Admiral Torres's voice. "All of them," he said. "Send for all available fleets." As his communications officer sent the request, Vexitar continued to study the tactical display. The human ships were already regrouping, and more vessels were arriving from different parts of the solar system. They moved with the easy coordination of a force that had trained together for years. But there was something else, something that bothered him even more than their tactical skill. The humans fought like they were having fun. Their communications were full of jokes and casual banter. They celebrated successful attacks and seemed to genuinely enjoy the challenge of combat. Vexitar had conquered 17 star systems for the hegemony, but he had never encountered a species that treated warfare like entertainment. Most civilized races viewed battle as a necessary evil, something to be avoided when possible. These humans seemed to view it as the ultimate sport. A new thought occurred to him, one that made his blood run cold. What if this really was just a warm-up for them? What if they had been preparing for this kind of fight for longer than he had imagined? He pulled up the intelligence files on human history and began to read. What he found there would haunt him for the rest of the war. Humans had been fighting continuous wars for their entire recorded history. They had developed weapons and tactics that other species couldn't even imagine. Most terrifying of all, they seemed to get better at warfare with each generation. "Fleet Commander," called the sensor operator. "We're detecting more human vessels approaching. They appear to be coming from all over the system." Vexitar looked up from his reading with growing dread. "How many?" "We count at least 300 ships, with more arriving every hour. 300 ships that moved like the ones he had just fought. 300 ships crewed by beings who had turned warfare into an art form. Vextar realized that he might have made the greatest mistake in Zephyrian military history. He had declared war on a species that had been practicing for this moment their entire existence. The high command of the Zephyrian hegemony gathered in their crystal chamber on the capital world of Zeph Prime. The emergency session had been called after receiving Captain Vexatar's disturbing reports from the human system. Supreme Commander Thekmol, eldest of the war leaders, spread his 6 arms wide as he addressed the assembly. Brothers, we face an unexpected challenge. These humans have proven more difficult than anticipated. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. The hegemony had never encountered serious resistance from a single world species. Their standard tactic was simple: arrive in overwhelming force, demonstrate superior technology, and accept the inevitable surrender. How is this possible? Demanded Fleet Commander Yorsek. Our intelligence reports showed a primitive civilization with crude technology. War leader Nextha, responsible for intelligence gathering, shifted uncomfortably. The reports were accurate based on their public transmissions. We detected chemical rockets, simple nuclear weapons, and basic energy systems, nothing to suggest they could challenge our fleets. Then how did they destroy 12 of our ships? Thekmol's voice carried the edge of anger that had conquered 17 worlds. They fight differently, Nextha admitted. Our commanders report tactics unlike anything in our military databases. They use improvisation, deception, and what appears to be calculated insanity. On the main display, recordings from the first battle played in slow motion. The assembled commanders watched human ships perform maneuvers that defied conventional military thinking. One vessel actually used a Zephyrian gravity beam to accelerate itself into a ramming attack. This is madness, muttered Commander Velgrim. No sane species fights like this. Perhaps that's the problem, said Thekmol quietly. We may have encountered an insane species. The debate was interrupted by an urgent communication from the front lines. Captain Vextar's face appeared on the display, and even through the alien features his distress was clear. Supreme Commander, I must report additional losses. The humans have begun what they call Phase 2 of their operations. We have lost 43 ships in the past 6 hours. 43 ships? Thekmol's voice rose to a roar. How is this possible? You have 10,000 vessels. The humans are not fighting like any enemy we have encountered. They have turned the entire solar system into a weapon. Mining stations revealed themselves as missile platforms. Cargo vessels opened up to release swarms of attack craft. Even their communication satellites have been weaponized. The display changed to show tactical footage of the latest engagements. What had appeared to be harmless human infrastructure was revealing itself as an elaborate trap. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting not just human warships, but the entire human civilization. They have been preparing for this, Vextar continued. Not for months or years, but for generations. Every structure they built, every ship they launched, every system they created was designed with warfare in mind. Commander Yorsak leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean that their mining equipment was built to be weapons. Their cargo ships were designed to be troop transports. Their communication networks were created to coordinate military operations. This entire species has been preparing for war since they reached space. The implications of this statement settled over the assembly like a heavy cloud. The Zephyrian way of war was based on superiority and intimidation. They built massive ships and overwhelming fleets because most species surrendered before fighting began. But these humans seem to have built their entire civilization around the concept of warfare. War leader Nextha called up additional intelligence files. I have been reviewing their historical transmissions. What I found explains their behavior. The display showed human military conflicts throughout their history, thousands of wars, millions of battles, weapons that evolved from simple clubs to planet-destroying bombs. The progression of human military technology was unlike anything in the galactic databases. They have never stopped fighting, Nextha said quietly. In their entire recorded history, there has never been a period longer than 30 rotations without armed conflict somewhere on their world. They have been at war continuously for over 5,000 rotations. That's impossible, protested Velgrim. No species can survive constant warfare for that long. These humans can. More than survive, they thrive on it. Conflict drives their innovation, their technology, their culture. Everything they create can be used for war. Thekmol studied the data with growing unease. The hegemony had conquered other worlds through superior technology and military organization. But they had never encountered a species that treated warfare as a natural state of existence. "What about reinforcements?" he asked. "Surely our numerical advantage will be decisive." Vextar's expression grew even grimmer. "I requested additional fleets 3 days ago. The reinforcements arrived this morning. 50,000 ships from across the hegemony, including vessels from all our conquered territories." "Excellent. Now we can crush these humans properly." "Supreme Commander, we have lost 6,000 ships since the reinforcements arrived." The chamber fell silent. 6,000 ships in one day. The number was almost incomprehensible. "The humans adapt," Vextar explained. "Every tactic we use, they counter within hours. Every weapon we deploy, they find a defense against. But worse than that, they learn from everything we do and use it against us." The display showed examples of human innovation during combat. Captured Zephyrian weapons were being reverse-engineered and improved in real time. Alien shield technology was being adapted to human ships within hours of capture. Most disturbing of all, human forces were beginning to use Zephyrian tactics better than the Zephyrians themselves. "They are not just fighting us," Vextar continued. "They are studying us. Every engagement teaches them more about our capabilities, our weaknesses, our thought processes. Meanwhile, they show us something new with every battle." Commander Yorsak spoke what everyone was thinking. What kind of species lives this way? War leader Nextha had spent days studying human culture, trying to understand their enemy. What she had learned terrified her. "They call it human nature," she said. "Competition, aggression, and innovation are fundamental to their psychology. They compete with each other constantly, in games, sports, business, politics. Their entertainment focuses on conflict and conquest. Their children play war games for fun." She paused, organizing her thoughts. "We view warfare as a tool of expansion and control. For humans, warfare is a form of expression. They have spent their entire existence preparing for a fight they didn't know was coming." Thekmal realized the full scope of the disaster he had created. The hegemony had declared war on a species that had been unconsciously preparing for interstellar conflict for thousands of years. Every human innovation, every cultural development, every technological advance had military applications. "What are our options?" he asked quietly. The chamber remained silent. For the first time in hegemony history, their military commanders had no easy answers. The humans had turned what should have been a simple conquest into a nightmare of adaptation and innovation. Finally, Vextar spoke from the display. "Supreme Commander, I believe we have made a fundamental error in our approach. We assumed these humans were like other species we have encountered. They are not. They are something entirely different." "Different how?" "Other species develop warfare as a necessity. Humans developed everything else as an extension of warfare. We have not declared war on a civilization. We have declared war on a weapon that thinks." Dr. Cathara worked alone in her laboratory deep beneath the surface of Zeph Prime. As the hegemony's chief xenobiologist, she had been tasked with understanding humanity's psychological profile. The war was going badly and the High Command needed answers. The data streams flowing across her workstation painted a picture that grew more disturbing with each passing hour. Human casualties were mounting, but their resistance was actually growing stronger. Every loss seemed to make them fight harder rather than weaker. "Computer, display human population distribution across their system," she commanded. The holographic display showed the Sol system with population centers marked in blue. Mars had 8 million humans, Europa had 3 million, and smaller colonies dotted moons and asteroids throughout the system. In total, almost 15 billion humans lived in space outside their home world. "Now show military engagement zones." Red markers appeared across the display. Every single human settlement was either actively fighting or supporting combat operations. This wasn't just a military response, it was total species mobilization. "Computer, analyze human historical warfare patterns." New data flowed across her screens. Wars spanning centuries, conflicts involving hundreds of millions of combatants, weapons of increasing sophistication and lethality. But it was the pattern that made her blood run cold. "Computer, calculate the percentage of human history spent in active warfare." Calculating. Analysis complete. Humans have been engaged in organized warfare for 96.7% of their recorded history. Cathara stared at the number. 96.7%. No known species had a warfare percentage higher than 30%. Most civilized races spent less than 5% of their history in active conflict. Computer. Analyze human technological development. The display showed human innovation over the past 500 years. Every major breakthrough, nuclear energy, computer systems, advanced materials, space travel, had military origins or applications. Even their entertainment technology had grown out of military research. They weaponized everything, she whispered. Her research deepened into human psychology and culture. What she found challenged everything the hegemony believed about intelligent life. Humans didn't just accept conflict, they seemed to need it. Competition drove their innovation, their art, their social development. Their sports were organized combat. Their games simulated warfare. Their stories celebrated warriors and conquerors. Even their business practices were described in military terms: market wars, hostile takeovers, competitive intelligence. Computer analyze human educational systems. The data showed that human children learned strategy and tactics as part of basic education. Mathematics included ballistics and trajectory calculations. History classes focused heavily on military campaigns and battlefield decisions. Physical education included combat training and team tactics. Without meaning to, humanity had been conducting the most comprehensive military education program in galactic history. Every human child graduated with knowledge that the hegemony's elite officers took years to acquire. But the most disturbing discovery was in human entertainment. Their fictional stories, movies, and games had explored every possible warfare scenario for generations. Alien invasions, space battles, asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics. Humans had imagined and practiced fighting every type of enemy long before they met real aliens. Cathara called up combat footage from the current war. Human tactics showed influences from their fictional military scenarios. They fought like they had been training for this exact conflict their entire lives because in a way they had been. Computer displayed current casualty ratios. The numbers were devastating. For every human killed, the hegemony was losing 12 soldiers. The ratio was getting worse as humans adapted their tactics and improved their weapons with captured alien technology. Computer, project hegemony casualties if current trends continue. Warning. Based on current engagement patterns, total hegemony fleet destruction is projected within 60 rotations. 60 rotations. The greatest military force in galactic history, defeated by a single species that had never left their home system before developing faster-than-light travel. Cathara began preparing her report for the High Command, but she knew they wouldn't want to hear what she had discovered. The hegemony had built their empire on the assumption that overwhelming force could defeat any opponent. They had never encountered a species that treated overwhelming force as a fun challenge. Her laboratory door chimed and War Leader Nextha entered. The intelligence officer looked exhausted, her usually perfect uniform disheveled from long hours of crisis management. "Doctor, please tell me you have found something useful. The front lines are collapsing faster than we can send reinforcements." Cathara gestured to her research displays. "I have found something, but you won't like it. At this point, I'll accept any information that helps us understand these humans." "Very well. The humans are not like other species we have conquered. They are not fighting for territory, resources, or political control. They are fighting because it's what they do. War is not a tool for them. It's their natural state." Nextha studied the displayed data with growing dismay. "Are you saying they cannot be reasoned with?" "I'm saying they don't want to be reasoned with. From their perspective, we have given them the greatest gift possible, a worthy opponent. They have spent their entire evolutionary history fighting each other. We have finally given them something new to fight. But surely they want peace. All intelligent species desire peace." Cathara pulled up recordings of intercepted human communications from the battlefield. The transmissions were full of excitement, laughter, and what could only be described as joy. Human soldiers were actually enjoying themselves. "Listen to them," she said. "They call this war the big game and the ultimate test. Their military leaders speak of worthy opponents and interesting challenges. They have turned our invasion into their entertainment." Nextha listened to several transmissions before turning away in disgust. "This is madness. What kind of species enjoys warfare?" "The kind that has been practicing it for their entire existence," Cathara replied. "We made a critical error in our initial assessment. We saw their primitive technology and assumed they were like other primitive species. But humans are not primitive, they are specialists." "Specialists in what?" "Violence, conflict, Warfare. They have spent 50,000 years perfecting the art of killing, and we have given them their first opportunity to practice on something other than themselves. The implications of this revelation settled over both aliens like a heavy shroud. The hegemony had unknowingly declared war on a species that had evolved to be the galaxy's ultimate predators. What do we do? Nixtha asked quietly. Cathara looked at her research one final time, confirming what she already knew. We have two choices. We can continue fighting and face total defeat, or we can do something the hegemony has never done before. Which is, we can surrender. The word hung in the air between them like a physical presence. The Zephyrian hegemony had never surrendered to anyone. The concept was almost unthinkable. The High Command will never accept surrender, Nixtha said. Then they will oversee the destruction of our entire civilization, Cathara replied simply. Because these humans will not stop fighting until they have won completely. It's not just their nature, it's their purpose. As if to emphasize her point, alerts began blaring throughout the facility. Another hegemony fleet had been destroyed, and human forces were beginning their first attacks outside the Sol system. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was just getting started. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of humanity's newest battleship, the Unconquerable, as it approached the capital world of the Zephyrian hegemony. Around her, displays showed the systematic collapse of alien resistance across 17 star systems. The war had lasted 4 months. What began as an alien invasion had become humanity's first interstellar conquest, though the humans refused to call it that. They preferred terms like pest control and cleanup operation. Ma'am, we're receiving surrender broadcasts from Zeph Prime, reported Communications Officer Davis. Multiple channels, all frequencies. They want to negotiate terms. Chen looked at the tactical display showing the once mighty hegemony capital. The planet's orbital defenses had been neutralized 3 days ago. The famous crystal cities that had ruled 17 worlds now cowered behind failing shield generators. Any word from the other human fleets? Admiral Torres reports that the Rigel system has surrendered completely. Admiral Jackson says the Vegan colonies are offering tribute. The entire hegemony military structure is collapsing. Chen nodded with satisfaction. The aliens had made the classic mistake of assuming that human tactics would remain consistent. Instead, humanity had adapted and evolved their warfare with each engagement. By the end, human forces were fighting better than the aliens had ever fought. What kind of terms are they offering? She asked. Davis consulted his screen. Complete territorial surrender, reparations, technological exchange, and what they call eternal submission to human authority. Eternal submission? Chen raised an eyebrow. That seems a bit much. We're not conquerors. Should I tell them that? Chen considered the question. The truth was that humanity had never intended to conquer anyone. They had simply wanted to defend themselves, but as the war progressed, it became clear that the only way to ensure the aliens wouldn't attack again was to remove their ability to wage war entirely. Tell them we'll consider their terms, but first I want to speak with their leadership directly. An hour later, the main screen showed the interior of what had once been the hegemony's supreme command center. The crystal chamber was dark and damaged, with only emergency lighting casting eerie shadows on the alien commanders gathered there. Supreme Commander Thecamol looked older than his species norm, his 6 arms hanging limp at his sides. When he spoke, his voice carried defeat like a physical weight. Admiral Chen of the human forces, I am Supreme Commander Thecamol of what was once the Zephyrian hegemony. We formally request terms for our surrender. Chen studied the alien leader with interest. 4 months ago, this being had commanded the largest military force in the known galaxy. Now he looked broken and exhausted. Commander Thecamol, before we discuss terms, I want to understand something. Why did you attack us? What did you hope to gain? Thecamol's mandibles clicked together in what humans had learned was an expression of regret. We believed you were a primitive species that could be easily conquered. We were incorrect. That's an understatement. You lost over 90% of your fleet. We lost everything, Thecamol replied quietly. Our military is destroyed. Our conquered territories have rebelled and our homeworlds are defenseless. You have achieved in 4 months what we thought impossible, the complete destruction of our empire. Chen felt a moment of sympathy for the alien commander. The hegemony had built their entire civilization on military conquest. and humanity had proven that their approach was fundamentally flawed. "We didn't want to destroy your empire," she said. "We just wanted you to leave us alone. We understand that now, but the damage is complete. The hegemony no longer exists as a functional government. 17 worlds that once obeyed our commands now govern themselves. Our military infrastructure has been eliminated. We are, as you might say, finished." Chen looked around at her staff, then back at the alien leader. "What do you want from us?" "Protection," Thekmal said simply. "Our former subject worlds remember how we treated them. Without our military to maintain order, they will seek revenge. We request that humanity assume responsibility for our defense." The request surprised Chen. She had expected demands for mercy or negotiations about territory. Instead, the aliens were asking humans to take over their entire civilization. "You want us to become your protectors? You have demonstrated superior tactical ability, technological adaptability, and strategic thinking. More importantly, you have shown restraint in victory. Despite your overwhelming military advantage, you have not engaged in the massacre we would have expected from any species that defeated us so completely." Chen realized what the alien was really saying. The hegemony had built their empire through intimidation and overwhelming force, but they had never learned how to actually govern different species. Now that their military was gone, they had no idea how to maintain order. "What about your conquered territories? Do they want human protection too?" War Leader Nextha stepped forward. "Admiral, we have been in communication with our former subjects. They have requested that humanity establish what they call protective oversight of this region of space. They fear chaos and war without some form of central authority." Chen began to understand the full scope of what had happened. Humanity had accidentally created a power vacuum that affected 17 star systems and dozens of species. The aliens weren't just surrendering, they were asking humans to take responsibility for an entire region of the galaxy. "This isn't what we intended," she said. "Nevertheless, it is what has occurred," Thekmal replied. "We have studied your species extensively during this conflict. You have the military capability to maintain order, the technological adaptability to solve problems, and the cultural flexibility to work with different species. Most importantly, you fight to protect rather than to conquer." Chen looked at the tactical displays showing human forces throughout the former hegemony territories. Her people had been defending liberated worlds from raiders and maintaining order in systems where local governments had collapsed. Without meaning to, humanity had become the region's stabilizing force. "What exactly are you proposing?" "The establishment of what we might call the Terran Protection Accords. Humanity would assume responsibility for defense and dispute resolution in this region. Local worlds would maintain their own governments but would accept human oversight on matters of interstellar importance." Chen considered the proposal. It would mean humanity's first step toward becoming a galactic power, something they had never intended or wanted. But the alternative might be chaos and war throughout 17 star systems. "I'll need to consult with Earth Command," she said finally. "Of course. But Admiral, please understand that we are not offering this arrangement because we must. We are requesting it because we believe humanity is the only species capable of maintaining peace in this region." As the communication ended, Chen turned to her staff. "Opinions?" Colonel Martinez spoke first. "Ma'am, we've already been doing peacekeeping work in half these systems. Making it official might actually be easier than the current situation." "The aliens have a point about chaos," added Major Thompson. "Without some kind of central authority, these systems could tear each other apart." Chen nodded thoughtfully. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming about meeting aliens and exploring the galaxy. They had never imagined that their first interstellar war would end with them accidentally becoming the galaxy's peacekeepers. "Send a message to Earth Command," she said finally. "Tell them the war is over, but our work is just beginning." 6 months later, a small human girl named Emma was visiting her grandmother on Mars. As they looked up at the stars, Emma asked the question that had been bothering her. "Grandma, why did the aliens think they could beat us?" Her grandmother, a veteran of the Titan mining colonies, smiled and pulled the girl closer. "They didn't understand us, sweetheart. They thought war was about big ships and scary weapons. What's it really about? For most species, war is hell. It's something they try to avoid. But for humans? War isn't hell, Emma. War is home. It's what we do best. And those poor aliens found that out the hard way." Emma looked up at the stars where human ships now patrolled 17 systems. keeping peace between dozens of species that had never learned to live together. Are we the good guys, Grandma? We're the only guys who know how to fight well enough to make peace possible. Sometimes that's the same thing. Above them, the stars shone with the light of human civilization, expanding outward into a galaxy that was finally learning what humanity had always known. Sometimes the best way to end a war is to be better at fighting than anyone else. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.